Hey guys, it's Katie at scrappinkaty.ctmh.com, and I have a fun card to show you based on this kind of throwback from a stamp of the month many years ago. Now, for the card I'm going to show you today, it is using the brushed collection, which is part of the Bring Back My Pack. Now, this collection is only available till July 31st, so if you like what you see, you might want to go over to my website and grab this, and I'll leave a link down below. So I've already pulled out some ink pads, and then I have 3 small squares, and I'll leave all the measurements down in the description. And I'm just going to ink up that largest daisy from one of the stamp sets that comes in the brushed bundle. And I'm just inking that up in black ink and stamping it on these squares. Now these squares are slightly smaller than the image that I'm stamping, and I really wanted it to be like that. You could make your squares larger or even smaller to get kind of a better look of those being stamped off the squares. So now I am taking just a pale gray, it's called our Pebble, and I am just inking up the solid daisy image and just stamping that directly over that outline. Now that's one thing I love about our Close to My Heart stamps is not only are all our stamps clear, but so are our blocks in those acrylic blocks. Makes it really easy to line up. So I've done that, and then I am going to take one of these circles that comes with the stamp set, and I'm going to ink that up in green apple. Now, I could have stamped this off and then cut it out like the original card that I used for inspiration, but I decided just to stamp it on there. I did kind of want to look and see how these would look without the stamped image in the center, and I just didn't like it. So I nixed that idea. And so now I have a piece of black cardstock, and I'm going to take that same center to that flower, and I'm going to ink that up in that black ink and kind of create a tone on tone. Now I'm just going to random stamp this down the center of this piece of cardstock. Now I am making a Slimline card. These have become pretty popular in the last month or so with some bloggers and YouTube hoppers that I follow. And so this image, or this piece of cardstock, measures 1 by 8. And I don't know if you could see that, but you'll be able to see that in the still images. Now for my card base, I just cut it at 8 by 7 and then score that 7-inch side at 3.5 for a finished side of 8 by 3.5. Now for this Pixie cardstock, I am using the lighter side. Now if you'll remember, Close to My Heart's color cardstock has a dark side and a light side, which makes it really easy and really versatile. That way, if you wanted to layer some pieces, you could do that, or you definitely have options if you were to just want one color. So I'm going to glue down this black piece of cardstock right here on that left side of that Slimline card. And now I'm going to take some twine, and then much like my inspiration piece, I have pulled out some super old embellishments from Close to My Heart. And there are kind of like seed beads, I guess is what you would call them. But I'm just going to run some of that natural hemp along that left side. And I'm just going to cut enough that I can tie a bow. Before I do that, I want to take some of those pink seed beads, and I want to thread through that hemp. So I'm just kind of making sure that I have my tails long enough. And then I'm going to take those beads and just put them on each one of those, I guess, the tails of the hemp. Now, I do want seed beads at the top of my bow and at the bottom. So right here, I am just threading those through for that those top ends. Now, these seed beads are painted on the inside. So I'm kind of having to be careful. So far, I've picked some that were kind of easy to get through with that hemp. I do run into a problem here on 1 or 2 of them, and so I kind of have to switch it out and play again. But otherwise, they really went on rather smoothly, I thought. I was really afraid I was going to have to pull out either a thread and try to do it, or maybe even my paper piercer. And sometimes I like to run my paper piercer through those seed beads to kind of clean out those holes. So now I have 3 that will be at the top of my bow and 3 at the bottom. So I've just moved those seed beads way out of the way, and that way I can tie that bow. And then because I didn't anchor those seed beads with a knot or anything, I'll be able to move them closer to my bow once I get my bow tied. So right here, I am just going to kind of play with this. I do end up having to put some more toward the top. And then just kind of play around with that bow. I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to the bows. So some of my girls, I teach local workshops, and some of my girls refuse to tie bows. And so they always get me to go over there and tie the bows, but it definitely kind of puts a stop to our workshops because I'm over there tying bows, and then I have to mess with the tails, and then I have to fluff the bow part. I wish I didn't like my bow so perfect, but there's just something that's so pretty about a bow, and I just think that everything should just be perfect. So if you'll bear with me here, I'm going to kind of get those perfect and kind of twist that bow, and then you saw me move up those seed beads at the bottom, and then those are done. So all that's left for me to do for the front of this card is I'm going to add some pebble ink with a sponge dauber just around the edge of that white daisy cardstock. Now you wouldn't really have to do this, or you definitely could probably do black ink, but I just kind of wanted to give it some pop. So I'm just running some ink around the edges of those squares, and then of course I hit all the beads, but I cleaned them up right quick. And then another favorite trick of mine is I love to take our journaling pen and just add dots. It's kind of a doodling effect without actually drawing a frame around those focal pieces. And so I just love how those little dots look. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place the top, and you saw that I did not press that down. And then I'm going to place the bottom one. Again, I'm not going to add a lot of pressure when I put these down. And then that way I can center this center one. And then if I have to play with that top or bottom one to get them really centered, it's going to be easy to do so because I didn't press down on that adhesive. So I like how that went. And so now I'm just going to press down really well, make sure that those are adhered down. And then I decided to add stickles to the center of this flower. You will not probably be able to see it here, but I hope you can see it in the still shots. Just that extra glitter just really popped on this card. And then I loved that tone-on-tone polka dot on that black cardstock. So for the center of my card, I've pulled out a sentiment. I'm having to be really careful because those stickles are not dry. And I'm going to ink this up in black and then stamp it off on my card. Now that is just a little bit plain for me, so I'm going to pull the July 2020 stamp of the month. And there's a sentiment that had these little hearts around, and if you watched another one of my videos, you saw that I cut that piece apart, or that stamp apart. So I'm going to ink up this tiny little heart in Pixie ink and stamp a few hearts around that sentiment. Now I also wanted to add some shading to this sentiment. So I'm going to take that same sentiment, I'm going to turn it backwards on my stamp, and so now I've got that flat piece showing. Then I'm going to take that green apple ink that I used for the center. I'm going to stamp it off on a piece of paper and then use the second generation to kind of shade that sentiment. And I just love how that adds that extra something to the center of the card. So here are a couple of still shots of this card. Again, I hope you can see the sparkle that stickles added. Now remember that this is only available, this brush line is only available until the end of July. So I'll leave some links down below. Thank you so much for watching. Consider giving me a thumbs up and leaving a comment. And as always, I would love to have you subscribe and sign up for notifications.